spiritually, you can keep going throughout the night, for days, but your body says no. So I think one of the things we need to see is that exhaustion of the body is a reminder that we are bound by time. The problem with knowing that you're bound by time is that we don't know why. We don't understand. We think we are bound by time so our bodies can be rested so we can go to work the next day. No. We are bound by time to give us opportunity, to give us the space, if you will, because time is space. It's to give us the space to bring about redemption. And redemption is about removing from the hands of destruction, or from the jaws of destruction, those things which were created to last forever, which is everything that's spiritual. Nothing dies. A rock is not dead. Think about it. Earth consciousness. The manifestation of earth consciousness and the manifestation of good and evil is represented, is manifested by the body. You are more spirit than you are human, which is represented by what? The saline that you're made up of. Salt water. What, 90+% of your body is what? Water. The rest of it is earth, right? So 1% of you, roughly 3%, whatever it is, of you is earth consciousness. The rest of you is spiritual. So why do you let 3% of you rule 97% of who you are? And look at the damage it brings. Look at the damage of it. A question was brought to me about EMP, electromagnetic pulses. In the beginning, I was thinking about it from the perspective of the sun, how it emits electromagnetic pulses, and how it affects satellites and cell phones and power grids and stuff, right? But then on my way down the road, I was going back over in my head about some things that relates to that. I think the question that was raised or sent to me rather about one of my nephews was not related to the natural occurrences of electromagnetic pulses. Am I right, Levon?
Yeah, well, James, actually, she was talking about, I think that the government was supposed to be doing something today in reference to like the electronic pulse about the power.
Yeah.
And so he didn't know whether or not that would be something that would affect, our country. But it said something about the government was going to do some testing, and was people aware that it could possibly affect, our power. And so I think that's what he was referring to in terms of whether or not, we were aware that the government was doing that today.
Well,
in terms of
the government does not have to do that today because the government has already done it. When Einstein split the atom and made that bomb, there was a man named Tesla who invented, for lack of a better description of what happened, a weapon that emitted electromagnetic pulses. And the difference between the two weapons was that Tesla's weapon would not kill men, but it would immobilize vehicles and other weapons, and it would preserve life. Einstein's weapon would kill men. And they went with Einstein as opposed to Tesla because they wanted to send a greater message that we have the power to destroy everything. So what happened is Tesla was relegated to the back burner with what he had proposed as a weapon of massive preservation as opposed to a weapon of mass destruction. And Tesla died in a one-room apartment in New York with all his papers before him, and the FBI cleaned him out before his family got there. So when you talk about them testing it, they already understand the effectiveness of it because of Tesla. And I think Tesla was from Romania, I believe. You can Google Tesla and do the comparison between him and Einstein. Now, as far as the government testing it, I do believe that concerns like that come from some of these, what you call these folk who always stocking food so that they won't get loaded up.
Preppers?
Yeah, preppers. It's another term for them too. Anyway, I think a lot of it comes from these black helicopter type thinking folks.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, conspiracy theories. Because this has already been tested. It's already known what EMPs do. They just immobilize anything that's electronic. As a matter of fact, the reason automobiles had to be grounded is because when you were gassing the car, if there was an electromagnetic impulse being emitted from the sun, it would blow you up. So cars are grounded to the chassis and the tires are rubber. So for these reasons, so if you really look at what they can do, so what happens is, instead of it blowing you out, the electrical system is overpowered and it fries it. It cooks it. Now, as far as the power grids are concerned, that can be done now. You know, a power grid can be shut down with these impulses, or can be shut down with a computer. I mean, that's just not that difficult to do. So the awareness is there. I'm one of those people who are extremely leery of conspiracies of this nature. And the reason I'm leery of them, not only because I understand the historical nature of the EMPs, but I also am leery because I see things through in a dual way. I see things politically, but then I see the reality of the spiritual. It does not matter how things appear to be politically. They can only manifest the way that they are purported to be manifested if we allow it to happen. It doesn't matter what you want to present politically. Those who understand how to benefit humanity by exerting spiritual energy are the ones who determine what's manifested.
Say that again.
Are you kidding me? Rewind.
You can't.
Those who understand how to use energy for the benefit of humanity don't concern themselves with what politics is trying to bring into manifestation. Because they are the ones who are able to bring into manifestation what's needed. And those things that are needed are not always those things that look good or feel good. They are not always great physical experiences. They bring about tremendous discomfort because no one really changes unless they're uncomfortable. And you don't need to be comforted if you're not uncomfortable. And I truly believe that there is no comfort without confrontation. You have to confront whatever is bringing about you, responsible for your discomfort. You have to confront it. If you don't confront it, then you live in a constant state of discomfort. And you say, but Isn't it discomforting when you are confronting something and you're always in battle with it? I'm comfortable in battle. It doesn't bother me. Because one or two things are going to happen if I'm battling. I'm going to win or I'm going to die. Because I'm not going to stop. Does that make sense? I mean, that's where it has to be. If you are not willing to risk everything, then what's the point of bringing about the battle anyway? Why? Why would you even get started? That's just like you hear the gun sound and you start the race and you say, like, at the end of the race, I'm going to be exhausted, so I'm going to quit. So what's the point of starting? Well, you're self-defeated. So when we look at these ideas, the other thing I will say about this, if it were true that the government were going to test those things, we would know it anyway, because they would choose another country to do it in. If they really wanted to do it, they'd do it to North Korea. They'd shut down everything in North Korea. So we would know it. The things that we do, would you turn the fan off, please? The things that we are aware of are things that happen accidentally, usually. So anyway, are there any questions about that? Or does that do justice to what you were asking?
Yes.
Huh? Hello?
He said yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? So, all the things that are happening around us, not just the things that are happening politically, militarily, economically, all of these things that are happening are simply projections of what needs to be changed. Earlier, I made the statement that that Donald Trump is the essence of both political parties, the and the Republic. He's both. What I mean by that is that what he espouses is approved by both, because neither one of them care what happens to you as long as they can stay in power. It's a power game. And on a smaller level of that, it's like if you don't, the reason the Democrats are able to manipulate people of color is because we have no power. For 100,000 years, we've been trying to say to people of color, listen, register as independents and vote in the biggest races in the world just to prove to Democrats you're not going to be a Republican. It don't matter, because you don't get nothing nowhere until you show yourself to be powerful. But we never do that. Why? Because we were not brought across this great river of change to do that. We were brought here to change everything. We were not brought here to play a political game. That's why it's so difficult for us to do it. That's not who we are. We change everything at the root of the origin of everything, because we're in a state of constant creation. We are at the place now where the darkness is covering the deep. The deep is the confusion. The darkness is the wisdom. So we must take the wisdom that covers this confusion and bring order to it by separating the light from the darkness. The light's been separated from the darkness. Now what happens? We have to bring into fruition all of those things that bring balance to the universe. What are those things that bring balance to the universe? We groan within ourselves looking for balance. Humanity, if you bring balance to you and you bring balance to your world, and when you bring balance to the world that you live in, you bring balance to the world that you come in contact with. That's how it happens. So we're in a constant state, not of flux, but of creation. And if we talk about how someone with a negative attitude has a negative influence on everything it touches, do we not? So how come your positive attitude doesn't do the same thing? We don't look at it like that.
Bad company corrupts good character.
And that's what we are told. And if we buy into, yeah, but everything in the Bible wasn't intended to be in the way, wasn't intended to be interpreted the way it's interpreted, I should say. Because if that's the case, then based on what the Bible says, all of them will be stoned. I mean, think about it.
Being stoned.
Yeah, we would be sitting talking now. We'd be, I don't with nobody being here, as a matter of fact. When you really think about it. So why is it that when we buy into the whole idea of that, then I can see it if you're saying that bad company corrupts good character if the good character buys into the bad company. All our children were raised to be leaders. Period. You can't tell me that somebody led you to do anything. I don't want to hear that. That's your problem. If you did it, you led them to do it. You are a leader. Leaders must be strong enough to walk away from things that does not benefit the whole. Regardless of what they're. In other words, if you are a leader, you have to swim upstream all the time. You're constantly swimming against the current. All the time. And the only time that you are embraced as someone who brought about change is after you did.
That's true.
I mean, think about it. That's just the way it works. And it's okay. Suppose that it works that way because when you leave here, the essence of who you are and what you were fighting for spreads into the consciousness of humanity. And that's why you embrace it then. Because as long as you are in this body, you're limited to this field. But once you get your termination notice or your eviction notice and you exit it, now you're able to be influential throughout the universe. Because you're more aware of that. Right here, you're operating out of that 3%. Once you exit it, you're operating out of that 97%. All of it. So, any questions?
You don't have to exit to operate out of the 97%, though.
No, you don't have to exit to do it, but that's what happens 99% of the time.
Right.
Yeah. See, that's the whole thing with Jesus and the resurrection. We got all this thing messed up. We have made the resurrection something, a religious event that takes place at Easter. That's crazy. All thing Jesus was saying is that when you successfully crucify your dependence upon that 3%, you can live out of the 97% while at the same time being in the presence of the 3%. That's what's called a glorified body. A glorified body ain't nothing but a body that's balanced. That's it. That's all it is. And the whole concept of earth consciousness being dominant in this sphere is not about you ruling something as much as it is about the spiritual being dominant over the idea of carnality. And carnality is anything that is an affront to spirituality. So what he showed was that this is possible. But there's a price to be paid. And the price to be paid is this thing that you call your life. Did I hear someone almost say something? Okay, so what was that? Your life.
Well, your life is what you place at the mercy of the 3%. that 3%, but there's no predetermination of what outcome that brings. It doesn't mean you have to die. It's just you're ordering, what's the phrase? Ordering your steps, whatever. You're getting yourself in the right order. So, like I say,
let's say, for example, based upon everything we've talked about, right? Everything we see in the physical is a manifestation of spirit, therefore it is what? It is temporal, right? Temporal. It's not reality, right? Do you really believe that? Because if you really believe that, then is it a reality that Jesus died on the cross? Or is it a parable, an earthly parable to speak to a spiritual truth? You understand what I'm saying? What I'm raising? I mean, we cannot say that everything that we see with our natural eyes here, right, it's temporal, and everything else, all spiritual is reality, and then say that the cross experience is not temporal. It's not just simply a manifestation of the spiritual truth, but it really is not existing. It doesn't really exist. Think about it. Now that you've thought about it, suppose that this whole concept of resurrection, the way it is taught, is to keep you in bondage to the 3%, so that you can be more easily manipulated by those who are seeking power or seeking to stay in power. And if that is true, then the whole concept is a lie, isn't it? If it's manipulative, right? A lie is an attempt to purposely deceive, isn't it? Suppose that's what's happening. Now, you know what's funny? All of this comfort that I'm feeling from people in the room and on the phone, like, where do we go with this? Only because we're talking about the resurrection. Only because we're talking about the scriptures. But if we were talking about things that are happening at this moment, there's a very high comfort level with that. But we're discomforted with it when it comes to what's in the scriptures, even though they are supposed to have been written about a time that existed in this space of earth, quote unquote, reality. Or lack thereof, I should say. That's the only part that gives us some pause. Why? Is it because the depth of indoctrination is such that we feel blasphemous by even hearing or allowing ourselves to think these things? Suppose the blasphemy is in believing the literal nature of it, and that is the thing that separates us from the source of all power.
So just to be clear, or so I understand, you are saying that the scripture about the crucifixion and the resurrection does not have to be interpreted literally, or maybe even shouldn't be interpreted literally.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And
excuse me, so I can stay safe, right? I don't get tarred and feathered. That's my supposition.
okay. Okay. Suppose. And it's not as if we haven't examined.
I really believe that.
Okay. I mean, it's not as if we haven't examined other portions of scripture and come to the same understanding, which is, I guess that's how you started out, but okay. I just want to
Go
make
ahead.
sure. No, I mean, it makes sense to me.
And it would make more sense to you because of where you're coming from, your upbringing, the low level of religious indoctrination that you've experienced. So it would make sense. I really believe that.
I mean,
We know who spends their time in the club.
I like that
Next
song.
time. I really, the reason I say I really believe that is because I believe that we have turned the corner on this literal religious stuff. And having done that, I believe that we are on the precipice of transformation. And the transformation of which I speak is the transformation from the natural to the spiritual. That we are we have opportunity now to truly know, and when I say know, I mean experience, to truly experience a life of being in this earth consciousness, but not being a product of it. In this world, but not of this world. In the midst of all of this diversity, but not being a product of it.
So if you take it too far, we could say that Jesus and the disciples didn't necessarily live, that these are just concepts that were written about to help us understand spiritual things.
And I'm not taking it that far.
Right. But what I can see is the idea that what was written about the history was set down in such a way that you could see more than just the events that took place. Or the events were written about in such a way that you could be exposed to the enlightenment that was there rather than just a factual accounting of physical events.
I believe that events pertaining to men's lives were written
Right.
to be a map to guide us to the spiritual essence of what they were saying or experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that the disciples necessarily experiencing understanding of what Jesus taught to the extent that we are understanding it. I believe that. Keep in mind that out of all that they had been taught, they had to be forced to put it into practice. Because they were in the upper room. They were keeping it to themselves. And they had to be forced to do it. And I can remember, and I've shared this with you more than once, I remember when the whole concept of tongues came into my life in terms of my understanding, thinking I did anyway, the nature of speaking in tongues and what happened in the upper room. And I remember all the flack that I received as a result of it. And I really got tired of it. So I made a determination that I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. So I'm invited to do this pastor's anniversary. And I do my due diligence, extremely studious, doing my research, etc., for the message. And that Sunday I get there and I have my message written. And it is devoid of any of these conceptual things that I have seen in regards to tongues and other stuff. So I'm preaching, and all of a sudden, all my papers are gone. They hit the floor. and they mixed up. And I'm trying to stick to the script. Because if I write it, well, I can remember it. And I'm preaching, then all of a sudden my mind goes blank. And I say, yes, I speak in tongues. I don't care what anybody says. It doesn't matter to me. Then I start, instead of dealing with the pastor's anniversary, I started dealing with the whole meaning of tongues and how ignorant it is to, to take part in the Bible, and then when I finish, I'm shocked at myself. And I said, well, what the hell? I'm not going to keep doing it now. That's the experience I see in the upper room. It's in you, but you keep it to yourself because you don't want the flat. They did not want to experience the wrath of the priests, so they stayed where they were. They keep it to themselves, but they were forced out because the priest came at them anyway. You see what I'm talking about? That's what I'm saying. So I believe that those events were there, but they had deeper meanings. Like right now, the events that we are experiencing have a deeper meaning than what we are seeing at this moment. And some of the things we may be able to see now, but most of it we see retrospectively. The things that keep us from seeing beyond today's events or this moment's events or the events that we want to take place tomorrow or the you don't curse, you don't lie, you don't fornicate, you don't all the others, all this stuff. It keeps us from seeing beyond that because we don't even understand what those you don'ts mean. We have allowed men with very little spiritual understanding to define our spiritual nature. And that's the bondage that we're in. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, how shallow is it to believe that you can name it and claim it regardless of what it is or who owns it? It's yours because you believe it. That's how shallow is that? When in reality, if you're not devoid of spiritual understanding, those things, they don't have meaning to you. What does have meaning to you is seeking to understand or to manifest the principles of the kingdom and the righteousness, and everything else is drawn to you. You become a magnet for what? For what you need. And all these things that come to you, it's okay if they come. If they don't, it's okay too. They'll move you either way. But we have allowed men who don't know what spirit is or have no clue as to who they are to define these things for us in a way that if you don't have this, then you're not blessed. The stupidity of it all. And the heck of it is, you have some of the most brilliant minds who believe this. But the difference is between intellect and wisdom.
Because I think it goes back to the second part of what you were saying about, and I'm not sure if I'm quoting exactly right, but you said, what if we're blaspheming if we actually believe how it's taught in terms of the resurrection and all that. Can you elaborate on that? Because we've talked about this a long time ago, but I don't think we had this, well, me anyway, I don't think we had the spiritual insight that we do now. In terms of, and I guess what I'm trying to say there is because the way it's taught now is that you believe that man died on the cross, and because you believe it that way, it ends up creating an idol out of him. And also, in terms of people who believe in this, name it and claim it kind of thing, they also create idols in their own life. Because their faith is in the stuff rather than the thing that's beyond the stuff.
when I said that, I was saying, Jamaican attempt that the very principles that we are led to believe in regards to what makes a Christian are the same principles that leads us further and further away from the foundation of our essence. The whole concept of the communion thing leads us further and further away from what that really means. When it was never intended to become an idol. We live the same lie that the Pharisees or the priests were living when Jesus said to them, if you abide in my words, and my words, then you are my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Then what happened? The priests or the Pharisees said, but we are the sons of Abraham. We have never been enslaved. But that's a lie. And Jesus didn't address the lie. He simply said, and you shall be free. That's all he said. So, what's taking place is, even though we say that we are teaching the truth of the scripture, we're actually teaching the lie that the Pharisees told. The lie being that Jesus came to save you from all of your sin. And Jesus died on the cross to save you from all of your sin. What do you mean by that? He took all your slappy people. Hello, everyone. He took all. He took all your sin on him, right? And then what we taught.
Yeah.
And the question that got me in trouble at the beginning of the resurrection thing many years ago was, if he took all of my sin and he died for me on the cross, then I can do anything I want to do, right? Because I can't sin no more. But no one could deal with that for me in a way that made sense.
We'll talk about it next Wednesday night.
So, the response was some things are not meant to be understood, which is crazy to me, so I write it if it's not to be understood. So, every time we hear someone or we participate in, ask Jesus to make a difference in your life. Every time someone raises, quote unquote, holy hands, whatever that is, and say, Jesus, we worship you, that is blasphemy. Every time someone says to Jesus, and he will make it all right, that's blasphemy. Jesus says only the Father is to be worshipped. Jesus says that only the Father is prayed to. So, we have been taught how to be blasphemous. We have been taught how to diminish the power of our essence, the power of our being. We have been taught how to shadow the heart of the Father, of our Creator. We have been taught how to do that. How shattering is it to you if your child denies that you are its parent and calls someone else its parent? Mm-hmm. How shattering is that? I remember doing a message in Georgia, and one of my friends was there, and when my children were small, in our will, he was to be the executor and to be the guardian for our children when they were small. And I was doing a message, and I was talking about how close we are as friends and how much I trust him. I said, but guess what? I don't want my son to be like him. I want my son to be like me. You see what I'm talking about? I don't want my son to grow up saying that I'm Lolo's son. No, you're not. You're not. So, how do you think, what do you think the experience is when you put Jesus in the place of the Father? When you submit to Jesus as opposed to being submissive to the Father. If we were supposed to pray like that, why did Jesus say, what do you pray? Did he not? And there is a scripture when it talks about as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And then it goes on to talk about he came. Let me see if I can find that. George, you know all the scripture. Where is it?
Wow.
And you all know
Click.
I need to find that seriously because I'll get it in a second. I want to show you something now.
Which one are you talking about?
I don't know. Here it is, John 3:14.
Yeah.
See, you came back.
I'm trying to pull it up.
Okay, this is what happens. If you go to verse 12, right? Jesus says, if I have told you earthly things and you believe not, how shall you believe if I tell you of heavenly things, right? Mm-hmm. Then he says in verse 13, no man has ascended up to heaven, but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man, which is in heaven. See that?
Yeah.
He didn't say will be, but is in heaven. I'm going to get back to that in a moment. But look at this. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Why? That whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. This is what I'm saying. That has nothing to do with Jesus. That is not talking about Jesus. And we've been taught all along that is speaking of Jesus. This is why I believe that we are on the precipice of being in this world, but not of it. Because for the first time, we're being shown something that's been in front of our eyes forever, but we're not seeing it. Why? Because we have been taught how to be blind. If this was about Jesus, then why did he not say, for God so loved the world that he gave me his only begotten Son? If this is about Jesus, then why did he say that whosoever believed in him? That would be like me saying, James Richard, the preacher, he go sit on this little stool and he go teach tomorrow. I'm talking about me. I would say you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
As opposed to saying him, he go teach tomorrow. Why would I talk about myself in the third person? Why would I do that? But at the beginning, when he's talking about himself, he says, if I taught you, if I told you earthly things, and you don't believe them. Yeah. So why he did not personalize it when he got down there? It's because it is not referencing just him. That's why. Because this, but God is talking more about the son of the first fruit, the one who sees and experiences who it is. And it has nothing to do with an individual person, but it has everything to do with an individual spiritual essence. And the individuality of the spiritual essence is not that it only belongs to you. The individuality of it is seen in how you become aware of who you are. Because when you become aware of who you are, you begin to understand that there is only one spirit. And the one spirit does not mean that there is one spirit of good and one spirit of evil. No. There's only one spirit, and the spirit that it is you. One yet many. This is what it's talking about. And if we look at this whole thing, verse by verse, see, if I want to keep you in bondage, what I would do is take one verse, and that's my text. And I don't talk about what it's about, what precedes it. I don't talk about that. I talk about just that verse. And I teach you that anything that you do beyond that is not textual preaching. That is a problem for me, and has been a problem for years. Because I believe that you need to understand why did he say what he said. In what context was it spoken? So when you look at that, when he says that, if I tell you earthly things, you don't believe me. If I talk to you concerning the consciousness, the awareness of these things around you, and you don't pay me attention, what are you talking about? If I tell you that Donald Trump is the embodiment of both parties and the essence of the foundation of this nation, he is the embodiment of that. And if I tell you that, and I began to point to those things that have transpired since he has been in this office, and you don't believe me, how will you believe the spiritual things that I tell you? If I tell you, when Donald Trump first warned, the first thing came out of my mouth was, this is the end of the second Reconstruction. The only difference is that it's Donald Trump, the other one was Rutherford B. Hayes. And I began writing about that, and somewhere I have that in the legal pad comparing the two. That's the first thing that came to me. So if I can say that, and you lend no credence to it, how can I talk to you about the essence of the resurrection in real terms, in spiritual terms? How are you going to understand that? Then he says what? He says, patience of this thing is too big. That's what he said. Okay. Then what does this he say? He says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so much the Son of Man be lifted up, right? Mm-hmm. That's not talking about Jesus. If it was, he would say, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must I be lifted up. Or I, the Son of Man, be lifted up. Mm-hmm. Everywhere you see Son of Man in the New Testament especially, because the Old Testament doesn't deal with it like that, anywhere you see the Son of Man, it should be translated as human.
Okay.
Yeah. He said, just like Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, right? Mm-hmm. What is he talking about? And believe me, I did not have any intention to be going through this like this. I guess I'm supposed to. What is he talking about? He's saying, just as Moses was lifted up in the way, what he's saying is that the very thing that was killing them saved them. The serpent was biting them, right? Mm-hmm. And Moses raised up the serpent and said, look at this. And then they stopped dying from the poison, right? Moses was showing them the purpose of the serpent. All they were saying is that just like Moses drew the misunderstandings out of the people in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Moses elevated their thinking, so the human thinking must be elevated too. That's all he's saying. Elevated to what? Elevated to a place where you are drawn out of the wilderness of your misunderstandings. When you are in the wilderness, it's a place of confusion where you're trying to find yourself. And when you are elevated, you come out of the wilderness. Jesus went into the wilderness, did he not? And in the wilderness, all of these things were drawn out of him. They cannot be drawn out of you if you are not made aware of them and you allow them to be. Why? Because you have free will. This is not talking about Jesus. Then, whosoever believeth in him. Who's the him? Huh?
The Creator. God.
Whosoever should not perish but have eternal life. Who's the him? Go back up. No man hath ascended up to heaven, but he that came from heaven, even the human which is in heaven. It's not talking about a geographical place. Even the human which is enlightened. And if you believe in this enlightenment, that's what he's talking about. You won't perish, meaning that you won't end up self-destructing. It's not talking about being totally obliterated. It's talking about being where we are right now, the state that we've been taught to be in. One of self-destruction. And self-destruction is not about you destroying your house, your car, your job, your livelihood. Self-destruction is about you diminishing the essence of who you are. Why? Because you cannot possibly bring about change for the benefit of humanity if you are not aware of who you are. And being aware is not enough. You have to embrace it. And embracing it means you have to live it. So when you begin to live it, you can sit on your sofa and hear the weatherman say a storm is coming or a hurricane is on the way, and you say, no, you are made out of the same thing that I am made out of. You are uncontrolled breath, and you begin to control it with your breath, and it diminishes or it redirects. Are you following me?
Yes.
Yes.
Janice.
In that
Janice in the flow. I know I'm on the side. Go ahead.
in that moment when you hear that the storm is coming,
Mhm.
you have to be aligned with the desires of the Creator.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to
Go for
know if it's supposed to come
There you go.
or if it's supposed to be destroyed.
Right. When Irma came, I felt nothing about dealing with Harvey, Irma, none of them, except one. Nothing. And every one of you that I called was experiencing the exact same thing. I feel nothing about changing this. We have to let it take place. That's being in the line. Every individual will not be there, but there has to be someone in the gap. There has to be someone who's there to experience that. Why? It was now we see the reason it was necessary to let them do what they did. Because now you do not have to draw a picture for people to see the difference. They can see it for themselves. The difference in how people are being dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Puerto Rican can deny being one of us as long as they want to. They still us.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to be called black. They don't check that on the census form because nobody don't want to be black. Nobody don't want to be. I'm serious. Nobody else. The other folks don't want to be connected to us. The first chance that the Hispanic got the opt out of being black, they did. Check that box.
Sure did.
They checked the Hispanic box in the 70s. And Puerto Ricans, we are Puerto Ricans. We ain't y'all. We came from the same seed, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And whether you believe it or not, if you really want to know where you came from, look how they treat you.
That's right.
It was necessary. So that's the connection that you got to have. Guess what? It's painful sometimes. I mean, it's extremely painful to watch what's going on. I have made every effort to get to Puerto Rico. I can't get there. I'm not supposed to, apparently. Well, I don't want to go, and the pain that I have experienced in the way they're dealing with Puerto Rico and how they're ignoring the existence of the Virgin Islands. The pain of that, coupled with my knowledge and understanding of how they took Puerto Rico and how they bought the people in the island from the Dutch, how they sat in Europe in the late 1800s and decided what country would go belong to whom, how they divvied up Africa. I mean, it's like the people are property. You belong to me. You're a British subject because I own you. That kind of stuff. When you are in tune with the Creator, you know when to make that step and when not to. And the first time that I became extremely intimate with this is when Sandy went through New York about 5 years ago. Was it 5 years ago?
Yeah.
When Sandy went through, came with the East Coast, and I'm there in Philadelphia, and Chris was my nephew was on his way home from school, I think it was. But anyway, not from where he was in Western Pennsylvania. And sitting there to deal with that storm all night until he got home. And the thing that got me is that I didn't reflect on what happened after he got home. After he got home, I said, okay, I'm going to bed, I'm tired. And that was the end of it. But all night, it was deflecting tornado after tornado. Downgrading the storm from a Cat 5 to a Cat 3 or before it, immediately. That's when I became intimate with that. I did not understand at the time that the reason it was possible is because we have the same essence. Both of us are wind. Both of us are spirit. It's like you're with your friend and your friend is doing something wrong and you pull your friend away from it and calm your friend down. Mm-hmm. That's what you're actually doing with the hurricane. You're calming the winds. That's what's happening. So then when it talks about you won't perish, you got eternal life, right? It's talking about eternal life is not talking about living forever. That's a given. Spirit can't die. This is talking about the present age. You will be effective during your present age. We have been taught it so. We have been, our eyes have been punctured, so we can't see. For God so loved the world, Allah has so much affection for diversity until He did not want that diversity to be destroyed. So He brought you into this world to change it. Not the man on the cross, you. Because you are the man on the cross. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're not here to destroy this diversity. You're not here to do that. You're here to deliver the diversity from its ignorance. For He came into the world not to destroy, but to maybe save. Mm-hmm. You were brought here to embrace the diversity as opposed to alienate yourself from it. And the diversity deals with cultures, deals with the way people think, how they dress, how they act. Think about it. Diversity. When you think about it, how do you embrace this diversity and bring it to a place of self-awareness as opposed to leave it at a place of ignorance? You have to start with yourself. Yeah, when diversity is spoken of in this nation especially, it's talking about people of color. It's not talking about Asians, it's talking about African descent. It's not talking about no Asians. Think about it. Most Asians don't even vote, but they got power. They got power. Why? Because they got money. And they work together. Mm-hmm. They contribute to political campaigns. That's how they have power. I'm here to tell you that we can contribute to all the campaigns we want to, and anything will change. Our power is in knowing who we are so that we can change the course of humanity. The diversity of which I speak is that if you are, let me give you an example. Right to work state. You would think that that's a good thing because of the label. A right to work state means that you don't have a right to get paid. If you look at that, the relationship to how those who are African descent are treated, and when you talk about diversity, that's who is being spoken of. When you look at that, right, and then you ask yourself, I wonder why we're treated the way we are. Because we're a right to work state. Is that what are we really bad at that? Who taught you, as Malcolm said, who taught you to hate your wide nose? Who taught you to despise your neck of hair? Who taught you to despise your color? Who taught you that? Who taught you to be ashamed of your ability to dance and your jovialness, telling you you're too loud? Who taught you that? Who told you that? The same ones who understand where the power is. If I can diminish your self-awareness, I can diminish everything that you are. If I can convince you that your power is in financial contribution to a political party, I can control you. That's the essence of it. Who taught you to disrespect yourself? Gangs kill each other over what? Disrespecting, right? Right? 1918, Valdosta, Georgia. Lady, 22, 23 years old, walking down the sidewalk. Klansmen meeting her. She refuses to get off the sidewalk. She's almost 9 months pregnant. He snatches her and carries her to a tree, and his friends join him. And they put a noose around her neck and pull her up into that tree. And as she dangles there at the end of that rope, one walks up to her and cuts her stomach open, and the baby falls to the ground, still attached. And another one walks up and crushes his head by stomping it under his feet. And before she dies, he doused her with gasoline and stick a match to her. And the Klansman who started it all is asked, why did you do this? And he says, she disrespected me. Disrespected you because she wouldn't get off the sidewalk and let you pass. Who taught you to disrespect yourself and despise yourself to the point where you kill yourself by killing each other? Who taught you that? And if you've been taught that, it had to be for a reason. And the reason is simple, but yet complex. The moment you embrace the divinity of your being, the essence of who you are, everything changes. It changes when you embrace who you are. When you walk the sidewalk and refuse to give up your self-respect and put your life on the line, knowing that you also have a life inside of you. When you get to that point where nothing matters except doing the righteous thing, that's when change takes place. That's when diversity begins to change. It starts with the power. It doesn't start with the desire for power. Are you with me? That's what we're talking about. That's what, every time that we deny who we are, that's disrespectful. And you're disrespecting yourself. Embrace who you are. It's more than an external appearance. But if you cannot accept the external appearance, you certainly cannot embrace your internal essence. If you don't like what you look like, you don't know who you are. Think about it this way. Why would you dislike something that you had nothing to do with making and yet worship the one who made you? That makes no sense to me. This is not talking about Jesus. It's talking about all of us. This is not talking about politics. It's talking about spirituality. Talking about spiritual essence. It's talking about how we are able to transform everything that is. While we are in this cocoon that we call the body, we're able to do that. We're able to experience this transformation, so that when you walk in, you don't walk in with your head down and everybody looking down on you. When you walk in with your head up and everybody looking at you, because now you're no longer a caterpillar, you are a butterfly. Because you know who you are.
So, I don't know how to ask this question without derailing. What do you do if you're not black? And I know the answer is, I mean, it's the same, but I'm trying to understand how the other races and cultures fit in with what you're talking about.
Doing it by virtue of recognizing those wrongs that need to be righted and righting those wrongs. They are doing it.
What if you're Asian? What if you're Indian?
I don't know how to say this, but they just get caught up in what we do.
Good answer.
Because it's on each end of the spectrum.
Yeah. It's true.
Whatever we do, they just fall in line. I mean, that's just the way it is. When we embrace each other, it's just the way. Why? Because right now, for the most part, Asians don't want to be married to you.
Yeah.
If they had a choice of being Asian, black, or of African descent, or of European descent, which box do you think they go check? If they don't check Asian, they're not going to check out. So they just get caught up in it. So it's something for all of us to do. Keep this in mind. The very thing that was killing the people in the wilderness, the serpent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Moses held it up, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that took the sting out of it, right? The very thing that enslaved us is the book. So lift the book up and see what's really in it. Get enlightened by it and see what the real purpose of it is. And the book of which I speak is not just, the Bible here. I'm talking about holy books, period. See what's there, because the same thing is in all of them. See what's there. Embrace it, lift it up, and see the change that takes place. Everything in you that creates separateness will be drawn out of you. You can't live in this world and live in it in a spiritual way and separate from humanity, humanity based upon culture, race, etc. You can't do that. Moses meaning to draw out. So all these things were drawn out by the elevation being lifted. When it talks about those dying in the wilderness except for 2 folk, what it's saying is that all of those things, you got so much junk inside of you until when all of it dies, it appears as though there's only 2 left. All the people that came out of Egypt died, remember? Except 2, Joshua and Caleb.
Oh, yeah.
So when we look at these, the way things are in the earth, when you raise that question, it's happening. It's happening, and the Caucasians are expressing it. It is not the black people problem. It is our problem. We must solve this because we created it. I'm hearing this over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
We created it. So if you're going to solve the problem, something has to be there to put it in its place. That's where we come in. Forgiveness. That's it. Why forgiveness? Because once we forgive, we become one entity again. We embrace each other without regard to education, money, color, language, etc. We just embrace each other.
Do you think South Africa is a few steps beyond us in this regard?
I do. Excuse me, I think they're beyond us, but I also think that they don't get the big picture. Because a lot of the same things that were perpetuated by the white South African are being perpetuated by, what's the name of it? Political party. I should know because we've helped finance it. In South Africa. ANC, yeah. So it's,
I believe that.
there has to be a change also. Because they're worshiping the same God that the people who were the perpetrators of racism are worshiping. M-O-N-E-Y. Now this is the funny thing. It's the thing that always gets me. Always gets me. The majority of the people who died fighting for the South didn't have no slaves.
Yeah.
Hell, they couldn't even afford one. They couldn't afford to buy an old one. They couldn't work no more. Most of the people who died fighting for the South were poor. So you were fighting to preserve a system that had no regard for you. You had no part in it whatsoever in terms of benefiting, from the wealth of it. But how can that be? Because the capacity to think clearly has been diminished by virtue of telling someone, regardless of your financial standing, you're still better than them. That's it. That's where the work has to be done. That's what the work has. See, Bernie Sanders, God bless his old soul. Everywhere he went, he talked about the poverty of the black folks and how we need to be lifted out of poverty. Did he? Everywhere he went, so that's what he talked about. He talked about the ghetto. All of us ain't poor. 74% of us are not poor. Why harp on that? Deal with us as people as opposed to separate us. Deal with the laws and how they are enforced as opposed to dealing with what you call the economics of the whole race. When that's not the economics of the whole race. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So we and another thing, we have to use the word black, white, race for context. But while we use them for context, we must understand that they don't exist. The earthly term that we use is for context. Why? Because in order for you to understand the reality of the spirit, we must speak to you through the contextual nature of the earth. This is how the earth speaks. This is how it's comprised physically. But this is what reality is. Regardless of what we look like externally, all of us are the same internally. And that speaks volumes. We have the same organs, don't we? They're in the same place internally. Right? So when we speak about this physical internality being the same, it also speaks to the spiritual essence being the same. All of us are the same.
Well, even science says there's no race gene.
No race gene at all.
So there's no explanation for why we look different.
Well, the bones are different, which is weird. They can tell.
The bones are
From the
different
bones.
because of the genetics of it based upon the type of labor you did and the food that you ate. Yeah, so that's what makes the bone different.
Same with
Like skin tone and
Yeah.
eyes and things, yeah.
adaptability. That's it.
And that's the only thing it is. That's it. That's the bottom line.
Shouldn't be cursed by that.
No. Because actually, when you look at the word curse from the Aramaic, it means to hide, to cover, but one of the meaning is mystery. So when it talks about the descendants of Ham being cursed, it's saying that the descendants of Ham is going to be they're going to solve the mystery that divides us.
Where do the Jews fit in there? Are they just on the continuum?
There are no Jews. I'm seriously, there are no Jews. The people in Israel are Eastern Europeans.
Well, yeah, the original ones.
Yeah, who accepted
Yeah.
Judaism as a religion, which was never intended to be. But there are no Jews. There are just as many Jews in the earth as there is a race called black. It's non-existent.
It's interesting. There was I've lost it now, but there was a Jewish channel on DirecTV or something that I once told you about.
Yeah.
And then the guy went too far. But at one point he said exactly that there were only the followers of Abraham until 2 or 3 generations passed. And people were, what are we? So then you had the creation of a Jewish or separate notion. But prior to that,
This whole thing about diversity speaks to that.
they were all said.
We got labels when, what was it, 1700s, when we began to be labeled. The purpose of black and white was to create race, was to create racism. It's a slavery label. It's a label for enslavement. That's what black and white, that's the only reason it exists. The only reason that idea of race exists is for that purpose. There are no positive purposes for race. Why is it that if all of us, whether you be Democrat, okay, let's say the Democrats are the party for the people, right? Why is it that you're not fighting to take race off of census form? Why does it matter what race you are? Why? Let's check the box. Say I'm not a robot. Keep voting. I mean, why is that important?
I mean, the argument could be made that the system can't correct for injustices unless they know.
And my argument would be that the system can't correct for injustice because it knows. If
How
you
do
don't
you
know
measure?
who's on the other end of the application and you do it based on merit,
But
let me tell you what happened to me.
that is the argument.
When I came from
Two
DC,
sides to it.
I applied for a job, Beltone, and they did a telephone interview, and I had sent the application, and the guy was going to meet me at the drugstore, and I was supposed to sign all the papers and stuff. And when I walked into the store, and he saw me, he said the job had been taken. I applied for a job at Westinghouse to be a diver at their nuclear facilities to check their underwater cameras and sensors.
Cool.
When they saw me, the job had been filled. Why? So if you don't know, if you deal with it on the basis of merit, that's where the difference comes.
I agree. The problem is, how do you measure? How do you find out that the discrimination happened?
What do you mean?
If they don't know what color
I
you
see
are,
what you're saying.
right?
Yeah.
At some point, they're going to see you.
Yeah, okay.
But how does the government go in? How does someone who wants to correct that go in and look at that company and say, "Hey, you don't have any women working here.
Now that's,
You don't have any black people working here."
that's now. That's for context right now. It's-
Yeah.
Right now, the applications, the gender designations, and the race designation were not there to prevent, they were there to create.
Right.
Okay, so now the very thing that was there to create is beginning to change that. You get to a tipping point where you take all of that off the application.
Okay. So once
felony.
we've got enough, once it's once the issues have been corrected and people are behaving, then we
Differently,
can.
yes.
Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute.
It's like felony on application been taken off.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword. It can work either way.
Well, it's working the other way now.
Yeah, but we've learned that all these things that were set up to make things better can be turned on their heads
I know.
and create exactly the opposite because none of them
Yeah.
And you know why?
really come from, to me, the real core. They're off center, so by definition, they're imperfect, so they're subject to manipulation.
That's why Malcolm said the difference between Republican and Democrat is that the Democrats learn how to manipulate people of color and pretend to offer them something when they give them nothing. So, yes, if we depend on the government to make the difference, there will never be a difference made. The government is being destroyed right now.
Well, it's like the issue with people who say, "I don't see color." It sounds so altruistic on the surface.
Yeah, you know, I used to have something for that, but I don't say it no
That's
more.
not the word I use.
But, you know,
Or I don't see
that's
race.
not the word I use either. It's quite good the word I
I'm
use.
Caucasian.
Yeah,
That's like it's a very privileged place to be.
See,
Like,
this is the thing.
No,
When you tell me you don't see color, you see color.
what do you see?
Yeah. I'm not
How do
translucent.
you not bump into things? I mean, what do you see? I don't get it.
You know,
We had some friends we knew in Niger that were a couple like we. And I remember her asking me once, "Surely now that you're married to Audrey, you don't see her color." I said, "Are you nuts?" Every day I see the color of her skin and where she's from.
I'm not
And
lying.
I love the beauty of it. You're telling me I can't enjoy that?
See, that's a racist statement.
She know what to do with that.
That's racist. The reason why you don't see color. Why? Because if I see your color, I'm not going to like you.
Instead of celebrating it.
Yeah,
exactly.
but that's racist.
Now you love somebody and not celebrate what they are. Okay, that's before you've been married 35 years, but still.
And I know what they mean is I treat everyone the
Yeah,
same.
yeah, but again,
And that's silly too.
we are what we call it. We are. I use the term microaggressive.
Microaggressions.
Yeah, and we are aggressive towards each other.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again?
Microaggressive.
Microaggressive.
Yeah, we talk about hood rat. That's racist.
And ratchet, yeah.
Yeah, that's racist. We use all these self-deprecating terms. So that in itself is racist. To tell someone I don't see color. If you don't see color, then what you see? What you know? It's not about the color. It's about who I am as a person, whether I'm on time or late, like some people.
But that's the reason.
Throwing shade. You're not supposed to do that. You teach your law.
Well, I didn't know no shade.
Everybody is late today. Oh, okay.
That's the whole problem.
CP time don't mean COVID. It's
Thank you.
time. But anyway, but you have the analogy in the same argument with women.
Of course.
So all these things is
Of course. I mean, and the key word with women that is microaggressive, it is exactly microaggression is the B word.
Yeah, but what are you gonna say with women? I don't see.
What is micro? You mean
I don't
low
see sex.
grade?
Low grade, yes. Low grade use
Maybe
criticism.
I'm not
things
talking
we
about
use
physical.
among our grade
Yeah.
subtle.
I don't see
Does
curves.
that apply also among other races?
Yes, well, it is.
Okay.
It is.
I didn't make this
When
up.
you look at, okay, redneck,
Okay.
hillbilly. Yeah, it is.
Or Euro trash.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, or when you talk about trailer park trash, or trailer trash, you know, that's racist.
I got a book for you to read.
You know, it's a whole lot of, you know, what do you say? You say, well, you know what? That's a doggone shame.
Oh, wait.
That man look at his daughter like that. What do you say? He must be from the mountains. No, that's racist. That's what they do in West Virginia. That's racist. We must change the way we talk. Because just because we are saying it doesn't make it right.
That's right. You're right.
It doesn't.
That's true.
If I tell you that sticking a lit cigarette to your skin is exhilarating when you know it's not, it doesn't change the fact that it will hurt you. So when I say that the N-word is an endearing term, it doesn't change the original meaning of it. It doesn't change the power in it. It doesn't change the impact of it. It is still a negative impact. And whether you feel it or not, at some level in you, it is there. The pain is there. And it is not a term of endearment. You know, when I was talking earlier about the ideal of disrespect, right? Where did that come from? We used to respect each other. Where did it come from? Gangs came from the mafia. That's where the concept came from, the mafia. There's strength in numbers.
Yeah, and it was an inner city mafia.
Yes. That's where it came from. And if you sit and talk to individual gang members, they will tell you the same thing. If I had a job, I wouldn't do this. If I could get a job, I wouldn't do this. Now, of course, there's an exception to every rule. You got some of them out there who don't care one way or the other, but the majority of them are not like that. They don't want to do that. But how do you force them to do that? You take all the jobs out of the inner city. That's what you do. I remember when D.C., when you went to D.C., everybody in D.C. worked for the federal government. All of them look like us. Go ahead now. Huge difference.
It's because they all work for the Department of Defense.
Huge difference. And that in itself is racist.
Including my son.
You know, Department of Defense. Who do you think defend this country? Poor people. Who do you think jumped in front of everybody to join the military? Hispanics and Puerto Ricans. Who get the worst treatment? Hispanics and Puerto Ricans. But yet they're not us. Are you kidding me? Think about it. We have to change all of this. And the way we change this is by understanding the essence of what Jesus represented. Not that he represented an opportunity to get up early Sunday morning. Not that. It's not Easter, so you can get a new dress. It's Easter in itself is crazy. It could be.
It is confusing.
Boiled eggs, dead chickens. Bunny rabbits don't lay eggs. Bunny rabbit don't. Rabbit don't do eggs. Think about how stupid it is. I don't know what Bessie said, but don't tell me later. But anyway, I mean, did you see? And we of course, you're laughing if you need to laugh. That's what is good for you. However, the truth is there. These things are the things that keeps us in bondage. And if we play into that, then we defeat the purpose for our coming together. We can't play into that. We have to get to the place where the message that you wrote falls to the floor, and now you got to speak what's really in your heart. You got to talk about who you really are and what you really believe. And if you really look at the scriptures, it doesn't say believe the truth and it will make you free. It says know the truth. Experience it. How can you believe something that you don't know? If I tell you that I will be there at 12, or if I tell you I will call you to help you get through this, and you don't know me, you don't know whether to believe that or not. But because you know me, if I tell you I'm going to be there for you, you believe that because of your experience with me, right? Because you know me. So when you tell somebody, believe on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and thou shalt be saved, how you going to believe what you don't know? You don't know nothing about Jesus. Christ ain't his last name, and his middle name, and Lord ain't his first name. Come on now. But that's not the case. Lord Jesus Christ, that's not it. You have to know. when I said many years, or what, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5, I don't know, read only was in the red, let's deal with that first. I didn't understand what I was singing. I didn't know the reason for that, but I knew what was in my heart to say. And now I understand it. And the reason I had to say it is because not only are those books that the priest wrote in the Old Testament for their benefit, the books that Paul wrote, messages in it, are for his benefit. He had to write that because he truly believed when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So what you do, don't rock the boat. That's all he was saying. Don't rock the boat. He said, well, I withstood Paul. No, you didn't. I withstood Peter to his face. Read the rest of it. He ain't changed nothing. The truth of the matter is, Peter put him in his place. And he shut up and sneaked on out. That's why Thomas said he's an imposter. Because he said enough for you to, some truth is there, but you can separate the truth from fiction. We have to be honest about what's there. We cannot sit back and embrace it simply because somebody said the Lord said it. This guy in Union, this preacher in Union I've had to run in with when I was teaching the scriptures, and we had to deal with that. Sort of what was in the Bible, he still told me I'm wrong, even though he read it for himself in the scripture. I'm wrong. And the only reason I'm wrong because I'm a black preacher telling a white preacher you're wrong. That was it. They go before the city council because they don't want to look about a drink in you. And he talks about how bad it is for kids to go to restaurants and drink, where drinks are served, right? His member got up and said, well, we go to restaurants together with alcohol to serve. You don't drink, but I do. I hope you don't hold it against me because I drink, just because you don't drink. So I don't see how you could talk about it. That you don't want your kids in a restaurant where they serve drink, but you go in and you take your time. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. That's crazy. Yeah. Your members know that? I try not to let them know because they get upset that I drink it all from them. Oh, share.
Only see.
Do expect you to share. Yes.
I mean, it's stupid.
And the good stuff, too.
You gonna leave bad stuff for everybody else?
I mean, it's crazy.
We fighted it now.
I'm going to end it because Denise is going to live.
What?
But seriously, I mean, the only way that we are going to be able to right these wrongs is to look at the stupidity of what we believe.
Yeah.
It's not consistent. It really isn't consistent. I mean, you would have an argument, you would argue to no end if you ask people, why is it that on the first Sunday you serve communion, and tell them that you don't even need to take it. They will argue that they will put you out. They will take your license out. You probably took them already, you don't know it. Think about what I'm saying to you. How crazy these things are. And then you have on this wall, the big old thing plastered on the wall that says we will refrain from alcoholic beverages, right? No.
Yeah.
You have one on the first Sunday. Wine.
Oh.
We can use grape juice then.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy.
not even wine.
It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense.
Where did this thing with drinking come from?
Southern Baptist. And there we go again. Southern Baptist. When they established themselves, what's it, Georgia? Was it Augusta, Georgia? Maybe? Somewhere in Georgia where the Southern Baptist Convention established itself. And it was one of the rudiments of their being formed was to support slavery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they broke off from the other Baptists.
Well, you know, they took a vote in Tennessee and to end slavery. And the Southern Baptists, they lost and they broke off. And as a result, you got what's called the American Baptists. And the American Baptists vote from the Southern Baptists on the basis of slavery. That's history is what? It's a
Eye opener.
no, it's eye opener. Yeah. It's and it only is that depending on how you deal with it. If you just know it and don't do anything to make sure that the parts of it that discriminates is dealt with, then you just like the ones who discriminate. So anyway, I don't know where we are, but yeah, there we are. So, any questions? No questions. Okay, that third chapter of John, those verses, I had no intent of going there. The last thing I want to say about that is this: we take scriptures and we make them cliches. One of the things that hold us in the tightest grip of bondage is when Jesus says to Nicodemus, "You must be born again," and to think born again and being saved are the same things, and not being able to explain either one of them, but yet hold on to it as being a truth when it talks about returning to beginning. And but to say that you must be born again and think that means that you stop what they call sinning, that in itself is bondage. So what happens is, for God so loved the world becomes a cliche, and cliches sound good, but they have no meaning. Be still and know that I am God. What's that? Psalm 46 and something, 20 maybe? 46 and 10, I don't know. 46 and 6 maybe. No, 20, 46 and 20. Be still and know that I am God. It simply says that quiet your spirit, quiet your mind, and realize that I am Elohim. And if the I am isn't created you, then you are I am also. So quiet your mind and come to a realization of who you are. Know who you are. That's what he's saying. Know the truth. And you shall know the truth is only after you become a student of what Jesus taught. That's when you know the truth. What's that? 8th chapter, I think, of John, know the truth. It's after you become a disciple. He said, then you are my disciple and ye shall know the truth. He did not say believe it, the truth. He said, ye shall know the truth. And knowing it is what makes you free. Free from what? Free from the bondage that the priest have put you in. That's what he's talking about. Thomas Jefferson didn't keep us in slavery. The church did. The church did. The slave master did keep us. The church did it. By using certain scriptures to justify it. That's who did it. It could never happen if the church had not been a part of it. And look what happened. The Quakers are the one who pushed hard enough for a war to take place that took us out of the physical shackles. Unless we commit a crime. So, any questions? No questions or statements? I'm done. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.